Duke Alistair tore the silver keys from his wife's waist and handed them to Lady Cecily. "You have disgraced this house, Helena. Your cousin will finish the Queen's gown without you." The keys struck Cecily's open palm with a cold metallic chime. Around them, the looms of Wycliffe Silk House fell silent one after another, until nearly 60 workers stood motionless beneath the high-timbered ceiling. Helena stared at the man she had married 8 years earlier. Alistair's face was rigid, but she recognized the tension in his jaw, the same sign he had shown whenever pride had driven him beyond the point where reason could reach him. "You have already judged me," she said, "without examining a single ledger." "I examined enough." He raised a folded invoice bearing her signature. It showed that 300 yards of royal silk had been purchased at twice the agreed price. 2 additional pages recorded payments to merchants Helena had never met. Every document carried the small blue crest she used for workshop accounts. They were excellent forgeries. "I did not sign those." Cecily moved closer to Alistair, dressed in pale gold silk as though she had prepared for a victory rather than an investigation. "Then perhaps your grace would explain why the inferior bolts were found in her private storeroom." A murmur moved through the workers. Helena turned toward Mr. Ashby, the workshop steward. The elderly man lowered his eyes. 2 days earlier, he had assured her the storeroom remained locked and untouched. "Who opened that room?" Helena demanded. "No one without your keys, your grace." The answer came too quickly. Helena looked back at the keys now resting in Cecily's hand. They had never left her possession, not until that morning, when Alistair summoned her from the dye room and ordered her before the assembled workforce. "You know what this commission means," Alistair said. "The Queen's coronation gown will be inspected in 4 days. If the palace discovers that we substituted common silk while charging the crown for the finest quality, the Wycliffe name will be ruined." "Our name?" Helena's voice remained controlled, though something inside her had begun to fracture. "This workshop was my mother's inheritance. It was nearly bankrupt when I brought it into our marriage. I rebuilt it while you called it an unsuitable amusement. And now your ambition has endangered my family." There it was, not concern for the workers, the royal commission, or the truth. His wounded pride had found the accusation it wanted. 3 months earlier, the Queen's dressmaker had praised Helena before half the court, and barely mentioned Alistair. Since then, her husband had objected to every expense, questioned every decision, and listened eagerly whenever Cecily suggested that Helena valued public admiration more than her marriage. "You could delay the presentation," Helena said. "Give me 1 day to trace the false invoices. The matter is settled." "Because Cecily told you it was?" Alistair's expression hardened. He had been offered a position on the Royal Textile Commission, and Cecily's father controlled 2 of the necessary votes. Helena understood the bargain now. Her husband could defend his wife and risk his advancement, or condemn her and let Cecily's family deliver what he wanted. He had chosen. Alistair turned to the workers. "Until the Crown completes its inquiry, the Duchess is forbidden to enter this workshop. Anyone who assists her will be dismissed without wages." Helena heard several women gasp. Most supported children or elderly parents. Alistair had made even sympathy dangerous. Cecily stepped forward and pinned the keys to her belt. "I shall preserve what remains of your work, cousin." Helena looked at the woman's carefully composed face. "But you do not understand my dyes. I understand enough to repair your mistakes. No, you understand enough to make them appear convincing." The color drained from Cecily's cheeks. Alistair seized Helena's arm. "That is enough." She looked down at his hand until he released her. "No," Helena said quietly. "It became enough the moment you chose public humiliation over a truthful inquiry." For one fleeting second, uncertainty disturbed his anger. Then Cecily placed a reassuring hand on his sleeve, and it vanished. 2 footmen escorted Helena across the courtyard. She did not struggle. She refused to grant Cecily the satisfaction of seeing her dragged from the building she had saved. At the iron gates, Helena turned back. The upper windows glowed amber from the dye-room furnaces. Behind them stood the looms she had redesigned, the workers she had trained, and the coronation gown that carried 6 months of her life in every embroidered rose. Alistair remained in the doorway beside Cecily. He did not follow. By evening, Helena's rooms at Wycliffe Hall had been searched. Her account books, correspondence, and formula cases were removed under Alistair's authority. Even her personal writing desk had been sealed. She was confined not by locked doors, but by something more effective, her husband's name. No merchant would speak to her while she stood accused of defrauding the crown. Shortly before midnight, Helena heard 3 hurried knocks at the servants' entrance. She opened the door to find Lucy Bell, the youngest workshop apprentice, soaked with perspiration and trembling so violently that she could barely hold the wrapped bundle beneath her cloak. "Your Grace, I had nowhere else to go." Helena pulled her inside. "Did anyone see you leave?" "I don't think so." Lucy placed the bundle on the kitchen table and uncovered a narrow strip of ivory silk. Several silver threads ran through its center. "Lady Cecily ordered us to burn every remnant cut from the Queen's gown. She stood beside the furnace to make certain we obeyed. But you kept this. I saw what happened when the pressing iron touched the hem." Helena filled a copper kettle and placed it above the coals. When steam began curling from its spout, she held the silk over it with a pair of tongs. The change was immediate. Black veins spread through the ivory fabric, branching outward from the silver embroidery. A faint, bitter odor rose into the room. Lucy covered her mouth. Helena's blood turned cold. The reaction did not come from spoiled dye. Someone had treated the embroidery with a compound designed to release poisonous vapor when warmed against human skin. At the coronation, the Queen would wear the gown for hours beneath heavy ceremonial robes. "Who handled this silk after I left?" Helena asked. Lucy looked toward the dark window. "Lady Cecily brought in two men I had never seen. One carried a military supply case. A bell rang at the front of the house. Then another." Lucy gripped Helena's sleeve. "The royal guards." Boots struck the entrance steps. A fist pounded against the door, as a man demanded entry in the king's name. Helena extinguished the lamp, but Lucy caught her hand in the darkness. "Your Grace," the girl whispered, terror breaking her voice. "Lady Cecily knows I saw her." The pounding came again. "Open this door in the king's name." Helena folded the poisoned silk into a clean cloth and pushed it into the hidden pocket of her skirt. She then directed Lucy toward the narrow servant's staircase. "Go to my old sewing room. Behind the blue cabinet is a passage leading to the disused nursery." Lucy's face tightened. "What if they search the house?" "They will search my rooms first. Do not come out until you hear my voice." The girl hesitated. "And if I don't?" Helena met her frightened eyes. "Then take the sample to Dr. Mercer in the village. Tell him to test it over steam, but not to touch the silver threads with his bare hands." Lucy disappeared upstairs as Helena opened the entrance door. Captain Elias Ward of the Royal Guard stood beneath the portico with 4 soldiers. Duke Alistair was beside him. Her husband's gaze moved over her plain nightdress and loosely tied robe. For an instant, he appeared uncomfortable at finding her so unprepared before armed men. Then suspicion replaced whatever decency had briefly troubled him. Captain Ward unrolled a document. "Duchess Helena Wycliffe. The Crown has received evidence suggesting that royal materials were stolen, substituted, and sold for private profit. I am authorized to search these premises and seize all relevant correspondence. You already seized my records this afternoon." "Those were workshop documents," Alistair said. "This concerns your private correspondence." Helena looked directly at him. "How convenient that the evidence expands each time the first accusation fails to satisfy you." Ward raised a hand before Alistair could answer. "Your Grace, I would prefer to conduct this search without disturbance." Helena stepped aside. The soldiers entered and divided between the library and upper rooms. Alistair remained near the door, while Ward examined the kitchen table. His fingers stopped beside the steaming kettle. "You were working at this hour?" "I wanted tea." Ward glanced at the 2 cups. Helena's pulse tightened. "One for whom?" "My maid was with me earlier." Alistair frowned. "Mary has been at her sister's cottage since sunset." Ward turned toward the staircase. A faint creak sounded above them. Helena deliberately knocked one of the cups from the table. It shattered against the stone floor, drawing every eye. "I am tired, Captain. If you intend to accuse me of entertaining secret visitors, please do it plainly." Before Ward could respond, a soldier descended, carrying Helena's small mahogany formula case. "We found this beneath the Duchess's bed." "That was not beneath my bed," Helena said. The soldier placed it on the table. Ward broke its wax seal and lifted the lid. Inside were 4 bottles of concentrated dye, a roll of banknotes, and a letter from a London merchant offering Helena payment for royal silk. Her signature appeared at the bottom. Alistair's face changed. Until then, some part of him might still have expected the allegations to collapse. Now he stared at the letter as though it confirmed every resentment Cecily had carefully fed him. "Do you still call everything a forgery?" he asked. "Yes." Ward examined the wax around the case. "Is this your seal?" "It resembles mine, but my formula case was taken to the workshop 3 weeks ago. Lady Cecily claims she needed it to compare embroidery shades." Alistair's mouth tightened. "Cecily returned it yesterday." And you did not think to tell me? I had no reason to believe. You had every reason. You simply preferred hers. Ward opened one bottle and held it near the candle. The liquid was nearly black. Helena smelled iron, vinegar, and something sharper. Do not warm that, she warned. Everyone went still. Ward lowered the bottle. Why? Because it may release a poisonous vapor. Alistair gave a bitter laugh. You recognize it quickly. I recognize what someone intends you to believe belongs to me. She reached into her skirt and removed the wrapped silk. Alistair's attention snapped toward it. Where did you get that? It was cut from the Queen's gown. Ward unfolded the fabric without touching it directly. Black veins had stained the ivory surface around the silver threads. The poison is not in the silk, Helena explained. It has been applied to the metallic embroidery. When the gown is warmed by an iron, or by the Queen's body, it begins to react. Who brought this to you? Ward asked. Helena remained silent. Alistair stepped closer. Another worker you persuaded to steal royal property? A worker who risked her life because I protected them for years, while you scarcely knew their names. If this sample is genuine, Ward interrupted, it must be tested immediately. Take it to Dr. Mercer. No, Helena said sharply. Ward studied her. Helena forced her voice lower. The compound may have come through a military supplier. A village physician will not possess the proper instruments. Send it to Professor Nathaniel Vale at the Royal Academy. He studied metallic dyes used to mark military cloth. Alistair looked suspicious again. How do you know him? He advised me while I developed the silver embroidery. And did he advise you privately? The implication struck harder than Helena expected. 8 years of marriage, and Alistair had reduced her professional knowledge to another suspected betrayal. She stepped close enough that only he and Ward could hear her. You wanted me guilty before you entered this house. Now you are searching for a sin more personal than theft, because it would make your cruelty easier to justify. Alistair's face reddened, but he did not answer. Captain Ward wrapped the sample and placed it in his evidence case. Until the analysis is complete, the Duchess will remain under guard at Wycliffe Hall. No letters, visitors, or journeys without my authorization. And the coronation gown? Helena asked. Lady Cecily has assured the palace that a harmless mineral caused the discoloration. She intends to replace the affected embroidery tomorrow. Helena felt a chill, deeper than fear. If Cecily destroys those threads, you lose the evidence. She has already been ordered to preserve them. You gave her control of the workshop, Helena said to Alistair. You handed the suspected poisoner both the weapon and the evidence. A distant orange glow appeared through the kitchen window. One of the soldiers crossed the room and pulled aside the curtain. Flames were rising beyond the estate walls. From the direction of the silk workshop, Alistair ran outside. Helena followed, ignoring Ward's order to remain inside. Across the dark fields, fire consumed the dye room roof, while bells rang frantically from the workers' cottages. Then Lucy emerged from the shadows near the garden wall. Her dress was torn, and blood marked one side of her face. They found the passage, she gasped. Lady Cecily's men were waiting at the nursery door. Helena caught her as she stumbled. Lucy forced something cold into Helena's hand, a brass military button stained with black dye. Before she could explain, an explosion tore through the workshop, and the windows of the dye room burst outward in a sheet of flame. The force of the explosion knocked Lucy from Helena's arms. Glass rained across the courtyard as fire surged through the dye room roof. Workers poured from nearby cottages, some carrying buckets, others calling the names of relatives who had been working the night shift. Helena pulled Lucy behind the garden wall. Stay here, press this against your wound. She gave the girl a folded handkerchief, then ran toward the workshop. Captain Ward caught her arm. You are under guard. There are people inside. My men will handle it. Your men do not know where the chemicals are stored. If the mordant barrels ignite, the entire building will explode. She tore free and continued across the field. Alistair reached the gates ahead of her. For once, he did not argue. The workshop had been his wife's world, but its destruction would also ruin his estate and end any hope of receiving the royal appointment he coveted. Smoke rolled from the eastern wing. Workers formed a line from the courtyard pump, passing leather buckets toward the flames. Helena seized the foreman's shoulder. Where did it begin? The dye room, Your Grace. The western door is blocked. What about the night workers? 6 escaped. Samuel Price and his son are missing. Helena looked toward the upper windows. A shadow moved behind the smoke. Open the northern sluice, she ordered. Flood the indigo vats and soak the wall beside the silver store. Do not throw water on the mineral powders. The foreman hesitated, glancing at Alistair. You heard the Duchess. Alistair shouted. "Do as she says." It was the first time that night he had acknowledged her authority. Helena wrapped a wet cloth around her mouth and entered through the loading door. Heat struck her face immediately. She kept low, following the narrow passage between the looms while burning threads drifted through the air like red snow. "Samuel!" A faint answer came from the cutting room. She found Samuel Price pinned beneath a fallen beam, shielding his 14-year-old son with his body. Flames had reached the shelves behind them. Helena tried lifting the timber, but it barely moved. Alistair appeared through the smoke. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Helping you? Then lift." Together they raised the beam far enough for the boy to crawl free. Samuel could not stand. Alistair pulled him across his shoulders, while Helena led them toward the loading door. A glass vessel burst behind them. Alistair stumbled, and Helena caught his arm before he fell into a burning loom. For a moment, their faces were inches apart, blackened by smoke. "You could have been killed," he said. "So could the people you forbade from helping me?" His expression tightened, but the roof groaned above them. They escaped seconds before part of it collapsed. Outside, the open sluice sent water rushing through the dye room. Steam billowed from the windows, smothering the worst of the flames. The main workshop survived, but Helena's laboratory, formula archive, and private records were destroyed. Precisely the rooms containing evidence that could clear her. Captain Ward approached, holding the brass button Lucy had given Helena. "This belonged to one of the men who attacked the apprentice?" Lucy believed so. He wiped the black residue with a cloth. Beneath it appeared a crown above 3 crossed arrows. Alistair recognized the emblem. "Royal Ordnance." "It is an old pattern," Ward said. "Withdrawn from active uniforms 5 years ago." Helena examined the back. A manufacturer's name had been filed away, but the thread caught in the shank was dark blue with a pale central stripe. "Not a soldier's uniform," she said. "A supply inspector's coat." Ward frowned. "How can you know that? Military cloth uses different thread counts for rank and department. I once competed for an army textile contract." "You lost that contract," Alistair said. "After your uncle persuaded you that supplying soldiers was beneath a duchess." The memory silenced him. Helena had nearly secured the commission until Alistair withdrew her application without consulting her. At the time, he insisted he was protecting the family's dignity. Now someone with access to military chemicals had entered her workshop, wearing the uniform of the department she had been forbidden to join. Lucy was carried to them on a makeshift stretcher. "Lady Cecily went into the dye room before the fire," she said weakly. She took the silver thread ledger and gave it to the taller man. "Where is Cecily now?" Alistair asked. No one answered. He searched the surviving rooms himself. Cecily's cloak was discovered beside the eastern door, scorched along one edge, but there was no body. At dawn, Captain Ward gathered the witnesses in the courtyard. The fire destroyed nearly all materials connected to the royal gown. Until Lady Cecily is found, no one leaves the estate. A horse approached from the southern road. The rider wore the scarlet coat of a royal courier. He dismounted and handed Ward a sealed order. "The Queen's dressmaker requests an explanation," the courier said. Lady Cecily arrived at the palace shortly before midnight and delivered the completed coronation gown. Helena felt the courtyard tilt beneath her. "That is impossible," Alistair said. "She was here after midnight." The courier shook his head. "The palace gate records bear her name and the Duke of Wycliffe's authorization." Ward opened the order and read it twice. Then he looked at Alistair. "The gown is already inside the Queen's private apartments. Its final fitting begins at noon." Helena glanced at the rising sun. They had fewer than 6 hours to reach London. Captain Ward ordered fresh horses prepared for London. "You remain here," he told Helena. "She is the only person who can identify the poison," Alistair said. Ward looked surprised by his defense. "She is also the principal suspect. Then guard her in the carriage." Helena studied her husband. His support came too late to resemble trust, but at least fear for the Queen had finally overcome his pride. Lucy caught Helena's hand before they departed. The tall man called Lady Cecily Miss Harcourt. Helena went still. Cecily's mother had been a Harcourt before marriage, but Cecily had never used that name. "Did you hear anything else?" "They mentioned Belhaven." Helena knew the name. Belhaven Military Dye Works had closed 5 years earlier, after several workers died from chemical exposure. The same year the brass buttons on the attackers' coats had been withdrawn. She gave the button to Ward. "Send men to Belhaven." Quietly. The carriage left Wycliffe at a punishing speed. Inside, Helena examined the forged palace authorization. Alistair's seal was genuine, but the signature looked unnaturally careful. "When did Cecily last have access to your private seal?" she asked. "She never did." "Think again." Alistair's jaw tightened. "Yesterday, she prepared my recommendation papers for the Royal Textile Commission." "You gave her your seal?" "I allowed her to finish the documents." Helena looked out the window. "You handed her my workshop, your authority, and access to the palace." "I did not know." "You chose not to know." He had no answer. They reached London shortly before noon, but palace guards stopped the carriage at the outer gate. Captain Ward presented his order. "The coronation gown may contain a lethal compound." The guard captain shook his head. Lady Cecily reported that Duchess Helena intended to sabotage the fitting. "The Queen's apartments are sealed by order of Lord Harcourt." The name confirmed Lucy's warning. "Lord Edmund Harcourt?" Helena asked. "The Deputy Master of Royal Ceremonies." Cecily's uncle controlled access to the coronation rooms. He could isolate the Queen, destroy evidence, and blame Helena afterward. Ward ordered the gates opened, but the captain refused without higher authority. Helena noticed a delivery wagon entering through the servants' arch. Rolls of fresh silk were stacked beneath its cover. She recognized the merchant's mark. "Those bolts are from my workshop." Alistair stared. The workshop burned. Only the eastern wing. Cecily removed the royal silk before the fire and brought it here, under another merchant's name. Helena approached the wagon and pressed her thumb against one bolt. Black dust marked her glove. "Not merely the gown," she said. "Every coronation banner made from this shipment may be contaminated." That meant hundreds of heated candles could release the compound throughout the palace. Ward drew his sword. "Open the gate." This time, his soldiers forced their way through. Inside, servants were already hanging ivory and silver banners along the grand corridor. Helena tore one down before a maid could place it above a row of burning candelabra. A palace official rushed toward them. "What is the meaning of this?" "Where is the Queen?" Ward demanded. "At the fitting." Helena ran. She reached the private dressing chamber as a scream sounded from behind its locked doors. Black vapor curled beneath the threshold, and someone inside collapsed heavily against the floor. Alistair tried the handle. Locked. From the other side, Lady Cecily called out in a terrified voice. "Help me! Helena has poisoned the Queen!" Alistair threw his shoulder against the door. The lock held. "Stand back," Captain Ward ordered. Two guards struck it together, splintering the frame. Black vapor rolled into the corridor as the doors burst open. Helena covered her mouth and entered low to the floor. The Queen's dressmaker lay unconscious beside the fitting platform. Cecily knelt near him, coughing dramatically into a handkerchief. The Queen stood behind a folding screen, still wearing her underdress. The blackened coronation gown hung several feet away. Helena saw the truth immediately. The poison had been released before the Queen put it on. "Extinguish every candle," she ordered. "Open the upper windows. Do not touch the gown." Ward's men obeyed, while Helena crawled toward the dressmaker. His pulse was weak but steady. "Bring vinegar, clean linen, and cold water." Cecily pointed at her. "Do not let her near Her Majesty." She created the poison dye. Helena looked at Cecily's gloves. Unlike everyone else in the room, she had covered her hands before the vapor appeared. Her handkerchief was also damp with vinegar. "You came prepared," Helena said. Cecily hid the cloth inside her sleeve. "I was trying to protect myself." Before anyone knew there was danger, Lord Harcourt entered with 6 palace guards. "Arrest the Duchess." Captain Ward blocked them. "No one arrests anyone until the room is safe." Helena soaked linen in vinegar and placed it over the dressmaker's mouth. His breathing gradually strengthened. The Queen emerged from behind the screen, pale but composed. "Explain what happened." Cecily dropped to her knees. "Your Majesty, Duchess Helena sabotaged the gown after my cousin exposed her theft. I discovered the odor during the fitting and pulled the dress away before it touched you. A remarkable rescue," Helena said. "Except the poison cannot activate without heat. Someone pressed the silver embroidery moments before we arrived." She pointed to an iron standing beside the gown. Its handle was wrapped in cloth, but steam still rose from its base. The Queen's gaze shifted to Cecily. "Did you use that iron?" "No, the dressmaker did." The unconscious man stirred. Helena leaned closer. "Who heated the embroidery?" His lips barely moved. "Lady? Cecily." Cecily rose abruptly. "He is confused." "Then explain your gloves," Helena said. "And the vinegar hidden in your sleeve." Lord Harcourt stepped between them. "My niece protected the Queen while you brought armed men into the royal apartments. The Duchess is attempting to shift blame because her conspiracy has failed. He presented a packet of letters. Each one carried Helena's handwriting and described plans to disgrace the royal family during the coronation. The Queen read the first page in silence. "Are these yours?" "No, Your Majesty. They contain details about the gown known only to its designer, or to the woman who possessed my formula books and workshop keys." Cecily's expression remained wounded and innocent. Alistair moved beside Helena. "I gave Cecily those keys." The admission changed the room. Harcourt's eyes narrowed. "Your Grace should consider carefully whom you defend. Your own authorization allowed the chemical shipment into Wycliffe." Ward unfolded the document brought by the royal courier. "Is this your signature, Duke?" Alistair examined it. "No." Helena took the page from him. This time, she studied the ink rather than the handwriting. The signature was forged, but the authorization line beneath it carried an indentation from another page written above it. She angled the document toward the window. Faint words appeared in the paper. 12 sealed vessels. Belhaven Reserve. Release by order of A.W. Alistair's initials. His face lost all color. "I did sign an order with those words." Helena looked at him. "When?" "6 weeks ago. Cecily said the vessels contained silver dye for your royal commission. You authorized a military chemical without asking what it was. I believed I was helping your workshop." "No. You believed Cecily because helping me directly would have required speaking to me." A palace guard entered at a run. "Captain Ward, Lord Harcourt's carriage has left through the western gate." Everyone turned. Harcourt was no longer in the room. Cecily rushed toward the servants' door, but Helena caught her wrist. The silver keys at Cecily's belt struck the floor. A tiny glass capsule fell from inside one key and shattered. Black liquid spread across the carpet. Cecily smiled through her fear. "You are looking at the wrong gown." From outside came the sound of trumpets announcing the arrival of the royal coronation procession. Helena looked toward the ivory banners hanging throughout the palace. Every one of them had begun to turn black. Black veins spread across the banners as sunlight warmed the silver threads. "Remove them without folding the fabric," Helena ordered. "Keep them away from candles and crowded rooms." Captain Ward dispatched guards through the palace, while servants opened every window. The coronation procession had already entered the outer courtyard, bringing hundreds of officials, musicians, soldiers, and foreign ambassadors toward the contaminated halls. "The palace must be evacuated," Helena said. Lord Pembroke, the Lord Chamberlain, protested. Canceling the procession would cause a national scandal. A funeral would cause a greater one. The Queen looked at him. "Do as the Duchess says." Alistair stared at Helena. That single royal command restored more authority than he had stripped from her before the workshop. Yet it did not erase what he had done. Cecily was placed under guard, but she remained strangely calm. "You cannot stop it now," she told Helena. Uncle Edmund prepared for every entrance. Helena seized the silver keys from the carpet. The broken key was hollow. Residue inside it matched the black liquid used on the banners. "You carried the compound into my workshop piece by piece," Helena said. "That is how you avoided the inventory." Cecily smiled. "You should be grateful. Your name will be remembered for centuries." For regicide? For destroying a coronation. The distinction troubled Helena. Harcourt did not merely want the Queen dead. He wanted the assassination to appear as Helena's failed act, followed by public disorder and political humiliation. Captain Ward returned. 12 banners are missing. The delivery records say they were sent directly to Westminster Abbey. The coronation ceremony was scheduled there the following morning. Thousands would attend and dozens of braziers would heat the building. "Seal the Abbey," the Queen ordered. A messenger departed at once. Helena knelt beside the shattered capsule. The spilled liquid was beginning to crystallize along the carpet fibers. She touched a clean needle to its edge, then held the needle near a candle without placing it in the flame. The crystal darkened, but no vapor appeared. "The liquid alone is not the poison," she said. "It reacts with the silver treatment." Ward frowned. "Can it be neutralized?" "Yes, but I need an uncontaminated sample of the metallic thread. All your records burned. My mother kept duplicate formulas in the old workshop chapel. Cecily never knew because she considered the building useless." Alistair stepped forward. "I will take you." Ward shook his head. "The Duke is not leaving." 2 royal guards moved beside Alistair. Ward held up the authorization bearing his genuine initials. "Until we determine why military poison was released under your order, you are confined to the palace." Alistair looked at Helena, expecting her to object. She did not. He had signed an order he refused to understand, surrendered her workshop to Cecily, and dismissed every warning until the Queen herself was in danger. Harcourt had exploited him, but the choices belonged to Alistair. "Captain," Helena said, "I need Lucy Bell and 2 trustworthy workers. Send them to the chapel. Tell them to retrieve the blue formula chest beneath the altar floor." Ward wrote the instructions. A guard dragged Cecily toward the door. As she passed Helena, she whispered, "Lucy will never reach the chapel." Helena caught Ward's sleeve. "Harcourt knows about the girl. Send soldiers now." The captain changed the order and dispatched 4 mounted men. Outside, the royal procession reversed direction as crowds were forced away from the palace. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed the queen had been poisoned. Others said the Duke and Duchess of Wycliffe had planned a coup. Lord Pembroke returned with a folded newspaper. This was distributed across London before the fitting began. The headline announced that Duchess Helena Wycliffe had attempted to assassinate the Queen after being exposed as a thief. The article included details from events that had occurred less than an hour earlier. "It was printed in advance," Helena said. "Harcourt had prepared the public verdict before committing the crime." Alistair read the article, his face tightening when he reached the final paragraph. "What does it say?" Helena asked. He handed it to her. The report claimed that Duke Alistair had heroically uncovered his wife's treason and personally delivered evidence against her to the crown. It transformed his public betrayal into proof for Harcourt's lie. "They used my accusation," he said. "No," Helena replied. "You gave it to them." A palace messenger entered, breathless and covered in road dust. "Captain Ward, the abbey has been searched. The missing banners are not there." "Then where were they sent?" The messenger offered him a delivery slip. Helena recognized the destination and felt her stomach drop. The 12 contaminated banners had been delivered to the temporary grandstand in St. James's Square, where more than 2,000 children from charitable schools were waiting to see the Queen's procession. And according to the schedule, the ceremonial braziers would be lit in less than 20 minutes. The Queen authorized Helena to leave under Captain Ward's guard. They reached St. James's Square as attendants began lighting the first braziers. Hundreds of children crowded beneath the ivory and silver banners, cheering at the approaching royal carriage. "Extinguish the fires!" Helena shouted. The master of ceremonies ignored her until Ward's soldiers overturned the nearest brazier. Panic spread as guards began clearing the grandstand. Sunlight had already warmed the upper banners. Black stains crept through their silver embroidery. Helena climbed the wooden stairs. "Move the children into the open square. Do not let them touch the fabric." A boy near the top railing collapsed. Helena reached him first, covered his mouth with her damp handkerchief, and carried him downward, while Ward's men tore the banners loose with hooked poles. One cloth fell across the stairs, blocking dozens of children. Helena seized its untreated edge and dragged it aside. The silver threads blackened inches from her hands. Within minutes, the grandstand was empty. The boy coughed and opened his eyes. Ward looked across the square. "Harcourt knew we would search the palace and abbey. This was his second target." "No," Helena said, examining the banner. "It was a distraction. A narrow strip had been cut from its lower hem. The missing cloth was large enough to line a cloak or carriage seat. A mounted soldier arrived from Wycliffe. The chapel was broken into before our men arrived. The formula chest is gone, and Lucy Bell has disappeared." Helena's fear sharpened into anger. "Did you find anything?" The soldier handed her a torn page Lucy had hidden beneath the altar. It listed 12 chemical vessels released from Belhaven. 11 had been used on the gown and banners. The final vessel was marked "Concentrated Compound, reserved for the royal carriage." Trumpets sounded at the far end of the square. The Queen's procession, redirected from the palace, was approaching in an enclosed ceremonial coach decorated with silver-threaded silk. Helena ran into the road and raised both arms. The driver did not slow. Captain Ward shouted for his soldiers to stop the carriage, but 2 armed escorts drew pistols beneath their royal uniforms. Helena recognized the black-stained brass buttons on their coats. Harcourt's men had taken control of the Queen's carriage, and someone inside was pounding desperately against its locked door. Helena did not move from the road. The ceremonial carriage thundered toward her, while Harcourt's men raised their pistols. Captain Ward fired first, striking one escort in the shoulder. The second shot shattered a wheel lantern beside Helena's head. She grabbed a fallen banner and flung its silver edge across the horse's path. Sunlight heated the contaminated threads. Black vapor rose in front of the animals, startling them sideways. The driver fought the reins, but the carriage struck a stone post and tilted violently. Helena reached it before the guards. The outer handle had been removed. Through the window, the Queen pressed a cloth over her mouth while black stains spread across the seat beneath her. "Move away from the lining," Helena shouted. Ward smashed the window and unlocked the door from inside. Helena helped the Queen out seconds before smoke filled the compartment. The surviving false escort tried to escape, but workers from the grandstand dragged him from his horse. Ward tore open the man's coat. Beneath the royal uniform was the dark blue jacket of a Belhaven supply inspector. "Where is Harcourt?" Ward demanded. The man remained silent until Helena showed him the brass button Lucy had taken. "Your master left you to carry the same evidence that will hang him." Fear broke his composure. "Belhaven," he said. He returned for the girl and the formula chest. "Why does he need my formulas?" Helena asked. "To prove you made the compound. He will place them beside the remaining vessels and burn the building before dawn." Lucy would be left inside. The Queen ordered Ward to take Helena to Belhaven immediately. Before they could depart, another carriage entered the square. Alistair stepped out under royal guard. Ward's expression hardened. "You were confined to the palace. I requested permission from the Lord Chamberlain." He carried a packet of official documents. "I found these among Cecily's commission papers. Harcourt promised me the chairmanship of the Royal Textile Commission if I removed Helena from the workshop and publicly supported the fraud accusation." Helena stared at him. "You knew there was an arrangement?" "I knew he wanted Cecily placed in control. I told myself it was temporary." "You told yourself whatever allowed you to take the position." Alistair lowered his eyes. Then he walked to the center of the square, where reporters and hundreds of witnesses had gathered. "My wife did not steal royal silk," he announced. "I accused her without proof, surrendered her property to Lady Cecily, and signed an order I refused to examine. My ambition gave Lord Harcourt access to the workshop and the Queen. The admission cost him his appointment, his political reputation, and perhaps his freedom, but Helena felt no gratitude. Public truth was his obligation, not a gift." Captain Ward took the papers. One document revealed that Harcourt had purchased Belhaven through a false company. Another contained payments to the workshop steward, Mr. Ashby. The final page was a list of witnesses scheduled to die in the fire. Lucy Bell's name appeared first. Helena climbed into Ward's carriage. Alistair followed. "You are still under investigation," Ward warned him. "Then guard me on the road." Helena faced her husband. "You cannot undo this by joining me." "I know." For the first time, he sounded as though he truly did. They reached Belhaven after sunset. The abandoned factory stood silent beside a black river, every window boarded shut. Ward's soldiers surrounded the building. Then Helena smelled smoke. Behind the upper windows, orange light appeared, one pane at a time. From inside came Lucy's scream, and above it, a man began ringing the factory bell, the signal that the chemical chambers had been sealed. Helena ran toward the factory entrance, but Captain Ward blocked her. "The chambers may explode. They will not explode yet. The bell means the ventilation shafts have been sealed. Harcourt wants the fumes trapped inside long enough to kill Lucy before the fire destroys the evidence." She pointed toward a narrow brick channel beside the river. "The old drainage tunnel leads beneath the dye floor." Ward sent half his men to cover the exits, while Helena, Alistair, and 2 guards entered the tunnel. Black water reached their knees. Heat thickened as they moved deeper beneath the building. Above them, glass vessels shattered. Helena smelled the same bitter compound used on the Coronation silk. "Cover your faces." They reached an iron grate beneath the main chamber. Through it, Helena saw Lucy bound to a chair beside the blue formula chest. Burning oil ran across the floor in narrow channels. Lord Harcourt stood near the door, feeding forged letters into an open ledger. Mr. Ashby, Helena's workshop steward, was with him. "You promised the girl would be released," Ashby said. "You were paid to open Helena's storeroom and copy her seal, not question me." Harcourt drew a pistol and shot him. Lucy screamed. Helena pushed against the grate, but it was bolted from above. Alistair braced his shoulder beside hers. Together they forced it open. Ward's guards climbed into the room first. Harcourt fired twice, then escaped through a rear passage as burning timber fell between them. Helena reached Lucy and cut the ropes. "My chest," Lucy coughed. He changed the labels. Inside the formula chest were Helena's original records and 3 military bottles marked with her crest. Harcourt intended them to survive the fire just long enough to establish her guilt. Mr. Ashby was still alive. Helena knelt beside him. "The false invoices," she said. "Who created them?" "Cecily copied your writing." Harcourt supplied the paper. Blood touched his lips. The Duke's seal opened Belhaven. They needed his signature to release the chemicals. "Why target the Coronation?" "Harcourt wanted emergency powers after the Queen's death. He planned to blame you and use Alistair's public accusation to make the story believable." Ashby reached inside his coat and gave Helena a small accounting book. Payments, names, everything. The roof groaned. Alistair lifted Lucy, while Helena carried the formula chest. They escaped through the drainage tunnel as the factory collapsed behind them. Outside, Ward's soldiers had captured 2 accomplices, but Harcourt was gone. A horse was missing from the northern yard. Ward opened Ashby's account book. It documented the purchase of Belhaven, payments to Cecily, chemical deliveries, forged newspaper reports, and bribes to palace officials. But the final entry was written differently. It claimed Duke Alistair had ordered the assassination himself. "It is false," Alistair said. Ward examined the page. "It bears your signature and seal." Helena compared it with the earlier documents. The writing was nearly perfect, but Harcourt had made one mistake. The ink contained particles of the Queen's silver pigment, created only 3 weeks earlier. The entry was dated 2 months ago. "This page was added later," she said. "It may establish doubt," Ward replied. "But Harcourt will argue that you altered the ink to protect your husband." "I am not protecting him," Alistair flinched, though Helena had spoken only the truth. A royal courier arrived before dawn with an emergency summons. Harcourt had reached London first and presented himself before the Privy Council. He claimed Helena, Alistair, Lucy, and Captain Ward were part of a conspiracy against the crown. The council had ordered all 4 arrested for treason. "The hearing begins at 9, the courier said. "Lord Harcourt intends to produce Lady Cecily as his principal witness." Helena looked at the burned formula chest, the contaminated button, Ashby's ledger, and the frightened apprentice who had survived 2 attempts on her life. Their evidence was strong, but Harcourt controlled the room in which it would be judged. Then Lucy removed something from the torn lining of her dress, a narrow strip of silver embroidery. "I cut this from Lady Cecily's cloak before her men caught me," she said. "It has numbers woven into the pattern." Helena held it toward the rising light. The embroidery was not decorative. It was a coded record of every chemical shipment, payment, and intended victim, including one final name scheduled to die during the Privy Council hearing. At 9 o'clock, the Privy Council chamber was already full. Lord Harcourt stood before the long oak table, dressed in mourning black as though the Queen had already died. Lady Cecily sat nearby under armed guard, but her hands were unbound. She had exchanged her smoke-stained gown for pale blue silk and arranged her expression into one of exhausted innocence. Alistair, Helena, Lucy, and Captain Ward entered between royal soldiers. Whispers moved through the room. Harcourt had ensured that members of Parliament, royal officials, and newspaper correspondents were present. He wanted Helena's condemnation to be public, because only a public villain could conceal a conspiracy of such scale. The Lord Chancellor lifted the forged account book. "Duchess Helena, you stand accused of stealing royal silk, producing a prohibited military compound, and attempting to murder Her Majesty during the coronation preparations. Duke Alistair is accused of authorizing the chemical release. What answer do you give?" "Both accusations are false," Helena said, "but my husband did create the conditions that allowed the plot to succeed." Alistair did not look away. Harcourt smiled faintly. "Even the Duchess condemns him. I condemn what he actually did. You do not need to invent crimes for either of us." Helena placed the burned formula chest upon the evidence table, followed by the brass button, Ashby's account book, the forged invoices, and Lucy's strip of silver embroidery. Harcourt barely glanced at them. "A collection of objects gathered by the accused cannot outweigh signed documents." "No," Helena agreed, "but your own design can." She held up the embroidered strip. Lady Cecily shifted in her chair. Helena had spent the final miles to London studying the pattern. To an ordinary observer, it appeared to be a series of silver leaves divided by black knots. But Helena's mother had taught both girls the numerical system used in complex loom patterns. "Each leaf represents a chemical vessel," Helena explained. "The number of stitches identifies its destination. The black knots record payments, while the direction of each stem identifies the person responsible for delivery." "An imaginative interpretation," Harcourt said. "Cecily can confirm it." Every face turned toward her. Cecily's composure faltered. "I have never seen that embroidery." Lucy stepped forward, despite the bruise along her face. "I cut it from your cloak when your men caught me in the nursery passage." "You are a frightened apprentice repeating whatever your mistress instructed." Helena placed Cecily's confiscated cloak beside the strip. One section of its hem was missing. The cut edges matched exactly. The Lord Chancellor examined them. Harcourt remained calm. "Even if the cloth belonged to my niece, embroidery proves nothing." "It identifies the chemical vessels," Helena replied, "but it also identifies your final target. She pointed to the last figure woven into the pattern, a crown divided by a horizontal bar, followed by 9 black knots. The 9th victim was not the Queen, it was the Lord Chancellor. The old man's expression changed. "You intended the poisoned gown to fail," Helena continued. "Cecily heated the silver embroidery before the Queen could wear it, then pretended to discover the danger. The public would blame me, Alistair would be praised for exposing his treasonous wife, and Cecily would become the loyal woman who saved the crown." Cecily's face went white. "Afterward," Helena said, "Harcourt planned a second attack during this emergency hearing. With the Queen frightened, the Lord Chancellor dead, and Parliament demanding order, he expected to receive extraordinary authority over royal security." Harcourt laughed. "And where, Duchess, is this imaginary weapon?" Helena looked at the tall windows. Morning sunlight had begun warming the silver cords tied around the chamber curtains. Above us, Captain Ward moved instantly. "Do not touch the cords." The guards pulled the curtains down by their untreated velvet edges. Black veins were already forming through the silver braiding. Council members rose in alarm. Harcourt stepped backward toward the door. "You inspected this chamber yesterday," Helena said. "Your office ordered new ceremonial cords for today's hearing. The delivery appears in the embroidery and in Ashby's account book." Ward seized Harcourt before he could run. The Lord Chancellor ordered the windows opened and the room cleared of every silver-threaded object. Helena prepared a neutralizing solution from chalk, salt water, and the uncontaminated mordant, preserved in her mother's formula chest. The treatment turned the reactive silver dull gray and prevented it from releasing vapor. Only after the chamber was safe did the hearing resume. This time, Harcourt stood in irons. Helena demonstrated each part of the conspiracy before the assembled witnesses. She showed how Cecily had copied her signature from the workshop ledgers and pressed Helena's seal into soft wax while possessing her formula case. Paper experts confirmed that the forged letters had been written on sheets purchased through Harcourt's office. The black dye supposedly found in Helena's room contained a military stabilizer unavailable to civilian workshops. Belhaven's surviving records proved Harcourt's false company had purchased the closed factory and released 12 chemical vessels. The genuine order signed by Alistair had authorized those vessels. Helena did not soften that fact. "My husband could have asked what he was signing. He could have brought the order to me. Instead, he trusted Lady Cecily because Lord Harcourt promised him political advancement." Alistair rose. "The Duchess is correct." Harcourt turned toward him. "You cannot save yourself by confessing to stupidity." "I am not trying to save myself." Alistair faced the council, and then the reporters seated along the wall. "I accused my wife publicly because I resented the respect she had earned. I accepted forged accounts because they justified a suspicion I wanted to believe. I removed her from property she inherited, threatened the livelihoods of her workers, gave her keys and formulas to Lady Cecily, and signed a military release without reading it. Lord Harcourt exploited my vanity, but he did not create it." The chamber was silent. I asked the council to record that Duchess Helena warned me, requested an investigation, and was refused. Every accusation I made against her was unsupported and false. He removed the insignia signifying his candidacy for the Royal Textile Commission and placed it on the table. "I withdraw permanently from the commission. I also surrender my claim to manage the silk workshop or profit from its royal contracts." Helena listened without mistaking accountability for redemption. His confession mattered because his accusation had been public. It did not restore the trust he had destroyed. The Lord Chancellor turned to Cecily. "What do you say to the evidence?" Cecily looked toward Harcourt. Her uncle gave her no comfort. His eyes held only calculation, as though he were already deciding how much blame to place upon her. "He promised I would control the workshop," she whispered. "He said the Queen would never be harmed. The gown was supposed to discolor, nothing more." "And the poisoned banners?" Helena asked. "I did not know they would be sent to the children. But you knew about the royal carriage." Cecily began to cry. "You had everything, Helena. The title, the workshop, the Queen's admiration. Alistair spoke of you as though your skill made him invisible. I only gave him the proof he was already searching for." Helena felt no triumph. Cecily had manipulated Alistair, but she had correctly understood his weakness. The conspiracy succeeded because he preferred an accusation that diminished his wife to a truth that required him to respect her. Captain Ward produced testimony from Harcourt's captured men. Combined with Ashby's ledger, the coded embroidery, Belhaven's ownership papers, and the attempted murder inside the factory, it completed the chain. Lord Harcourt was charged with high treason, attempted regicide, attempted murder, unlawful possession of military chemicals, bribery, forgery, and arson. His property was seized pending trial, and every official appointed through his influence was placed under investigation. Cecily was charged as a willing conspirator. Her cooperation spared her from the gravest penalty, but not from imprisonment, the loss of her fortune, or permanent exclusion from court. Mr. Ashby survived his wound. In exchange for full testimony, he received a reduced sentence, though he lost his position, and was ordered to repay the wages stolen from Helena's workers. The Crown dismissed the accusations against Lucy and Captain Ward. Then the Queen entered the chamber. Everyone rose. She carried neither the poisoned gown nor any symbol of mourning. Instead, she held the surviving ivory fabric that Helena had designed before Cecily contaminated the silver embroidery. "Duchess Helena," the Queen said, "your skill prevented deaths in my apartments, my carriage, St. James's Square, and this chamber. The Crown formally declares every accusation against you false." A clerk placed the declaration into the public record. The Queen ordered all newspapers that printed Harcourt's prepared story to publish the correction with equal prominence. Helena's confiscated accounts, formula books, and personal correspondence were returned. The Crown also granted funds to rebuild the destroyed dye room and compensate every worker injured or displaced by the fire. Most importantly, the Wycliffe Silk House was legally placed under Helena's sole management through a protected settlement. Neither Alistair nor any future estate trustee could sell it, seize its revenue, or appoint its officers without her written permission. Only after her name, livelihood, and authority had been restored did the Queen ask the question everyone else had avoided. "And what will become of your marriage?" Helena looked at Alistair. He had once been the man who encouraged her to show him the colors she could draw from bark, mineral, and flower. During their first years together, he had sat in the workshop after midnight while she experimented, reading aloud from whatever book he had brought. That man had not vanished in a single moment. He had surrendered himself gradually to jealousy, ambition, and the belief that his wife's success diminished him. Cecily and Harcourt had entered through a door Alistair opened willingly. He approached Helena, but stopped several feet away. "The London house and your mother's property will be transferred entirely to you," he said. "I have instructed my solicitor to establish annual payments for every workshop family affected by my orders. I will also testify at Harcourt's trial, even if doing so exposes every careless document I signed." Helena waited. "I will not ask you to forgive me," he continued, "nor will I ask you to return to Wycliffe Hall. If you choose a formal separation, I will not oppose it." That, more than his apologies, showed that he had finally understood. Repair did not entitle him to reclaim the person he had harmed. "I am leaving for the London house," Helena said. "Lucy will come with me and complete her apprenticeship there. The workshop will be rebuilt under my direction." Pain crossed his face, but he bowed his head. "And us? There is no us for you to command anymore. I know. If you become a better man, do it because you have finally learned to live without requiring another person to become smaller. Do not do it as a performance intended to win me back." "I understand." Helena could not know whether he truly did. Time, not remorse, would answer that question. 3 months later, Wycliffe Silk House reopened. The eastern wing had been rebuilt with wider windows, safer chemical stores, and a library bearing Helena's mother's name. Lucy became the youngest assistant designer in its history. The workers elected their own representative to review wages and safety, a condition Helena wrote permanently into the workshop charter. Alistair did not attend the reopening ceremony. He had asked permission. Helena had declined. Instead, he remained at Wycliffe Hall, selling 2 hunting estates to fund the workers' compensation, and answering government inquiries into every order signed during Harcourt's influence. His letters to Helena contained no pleas for reconciliation. She read them when necessary and left the rest unanswered. On the morning the new royal commission arrived, Helena stood before the assembled workers in the same courtyard where Alistair had humiliated her. A palace official opened a velvet box. Inside lay a new set of silver workshop keys. The Queen had commissioned Helena to create a second coronation gown, this time without poisoned silver, political interference, or another person's crest. Helena accepted on the condition that every master dyer, weaver, and embroiderer receive public credit for the work. The official agreed. Helena looked toward the iron gates where she had once stood stripped of her authority while her husband watched from the doorway. Then she placed the keys at Lucy's waist. "Open the workshop," she said. Lucy turned them in the lock. The doors opened from the inside.